Hello everyone, this is Dr. Gerek. I am back. We are talking about labor economics, immigration, and labor mobility. This is part 2. In this part, we'll talk about reasons for migration and impact of migration in a very simple model. So before we get started, subscribe if you haven't done so, and hit the like button to this video so people can find this video and benefit from it and learn more about immigration. So why immigration? Basically, workers are looking for better paying jobs and firms are looking for more productive, better workers. So migration is a matching mechanism. It matches workers to the firms. Labor mobility is the mechanism labor markets use to improve the allocation of workers to different firms. So for instance, let's say a company in Seattle is looking for a computer programmer, and we have great computer programmer students graduating from Texas A&M University. If there's a need over there and they're looking for the best student, they may match with our students, and our students have to move, right? Because those employers are not going to move to Texas. It's very widespread. 75% of workers in their 20s switch jobs within 24 months of their employment. This is a very, very big number. So every 3 out of 4 workers in their 20s switch jobs within 24 months. So I got my first job as a professor at 27. I did switch my jobs after 18 months. I came back to Texas. Okay, so in the United States, we get about 1 to 1.4 million immigrants every year. Because of the, stuff we had a couple of years ago, pandemic, unfortunately, our migration rates have gone down. There are 2 main reasons people migrate, like looking for a better job and better conditions. Let's talk about 2 main questions. Are immigrants lowering the wages and employment rates of native workers? Are they negatively affecting us? Are immigrants bad for the government's bottom line? In other words, are immigrants paying less taxes and collecting more benefits? Let's continue. So this basically depends on the skill composition of the immigrants. If they're high-skilled immigrants, they're going to pay much more taxes and they will never collect benefits. So when we say impact of immigration, we're going to talk about impact of immigration on native workers, firms, and native workers' total worker surplus. Okay, so it's going to be a really simple model. We're going to assume that every worker is identical. So immigrants and native workers are completely identical. Jobs are identical too, so there's no compensating differentials. Labor is inelastically supplied. So you have number of people that are looking for a job. This is the supply of native workers, supply of workers, employment, and for native. Okay, we also have supply of immigrant workers. I stands for immigrant, S, supply, employment, workers. Native and immigrant workers are perfect substitutes because they are identical. Okay, keep that in mind. So DE is the demand for workers by native firms. So this is the demand for workers for all American firms. And demand is determined by value marginal product of labor. If you don't know what this is, for sure go back to your chapter 3, labor demand chapter, price times marginal product of labor. So if we put wage on the y-axis like we always do, and employment here, number of workers, or it could be employment hours. This is the demand for workers, downward sloping demand curve, price times marginal product of labor or value marginal product. The supply of native workers is perfectly inelastic, perfectly vertical. Okay, so this is the number of native workers, and this is the native workers supply curve. That means I have En number of workers, and they're all willing to able to work, and they're all going to get a job. And this is the equilibrium wage rate, W star, before immigrant workers are introduced. So when you have immigrant workers, total supply will be not only native worker supply plus the number of immigrant workers. So you add them up together, your supply curve shifts to the right, many more workers in the market. So total number of workers, the employment is going to be this native workers we have right here plus number of immigrant workers. It's this area, right? E total is going total employment. And what happens here? Supply and so this is a supply and demand curve intersection. So this is new labor supply curve, native and immigrant supply, perfectly inelastic, perfectly vertical. This is the demand for workers, downward sloping demand curve, okay? So now you have a new equilibrium point where employment goes up, but wages go down to W double star. So before migration, let's talk about the migration surplus, worker surplus, and firm surplus. Okay, so this is before migration. Employment is at EN, right here. No migration yet. And wage rate is W star. What's the firm surplus? FS is firm surplus. How do we find firm surplus? This is how we find it. Area below the labor demand curve, okay? Labor demand is here. Above the wage rate is here. The firms have to pay. There's no migration yet, okay? So we're just talking about this. And limited by quantity of workers employed here, EN. So A is going to be the firm surplus, okay? So I label these A, B, C, D, E, but don't get confused between this E and these E's, right? This is just to label the area. What's the worker surplus? Worker surplus is the area above the labor supply curve. It's here, labor supply curve. I'm going to make it wavy. Below market wage rate, limited by the quantity of people employed here. So it's B plus D is your worker surplus. That's nice area. Worker surplus is B plus D. This is going to your native workers. And total economic surplus is A plus B plus D here. I just added up firm surplus and worker surplus. After migration, now let's take a look at what happens after migration. So after migration, again, what's the employment rate? Employment is going to be ET, right? And the wage rate is W double star. So labor supply increased to this, shifted to the right. Employment goes up, so many more people are employed, and wage rate goes down, so everybody's paid less, right? So what's the firm surplus? Again, we calculate the same way. Area below the supply curve, draw the supply, below supply curve, above wage rate is here, limited by the quantity of workers here. So you have this entire triangle now, firm surplus. It's A plus B plus C. So firm surplus becomes A plus B plus C. If you don't remember how to find firm and worker surplus, I highly recommend you go back to the slides of chapter 4. Chapter 4 is placed under your unit 3. Okay? So what is the native worker surplus? So native workers get the area below their supply curve, above their supply curve, this area, limited by the wage rate and number of people employed here. So this whole area will be native worker surplus. So native worker surplus for native workers is going to be area D. Where is the immigrant worker surplus? So immigrant workers, that's the area below their, above their supply curve. I mean this side of their supply curve from this area, because this area wholly goes to the native workers, and this area, their wage rate and their number, this is going to be worker surplus for immigrants. Okay, so if you look at this, actually we have total surplus of A, B, C, D. Okay, A, B, C, D, and E. So lots of areas are gained, right, from migration. So you gain E, that goes to their migrant workers, and C is gained by companies here compared to this, right? And firms also get the native worker surplus portion B becomes firm surplus. So the firms are really benefiting from this. Native workers lose area B to firms. This area is lost. US firms gain area B plus C from migration. Immigration surplus goes to the immigrants. Immigration surplus comes to the companies is C, and immigrants get the area E. So we have immigration surplus according to Borges's estimates about 0.1% of the GDP in the United States. Okay, so this is a very simplistic model, and this number just looks at the people who just entered, right? But again, the society built on the immigrants coming from outside. So this is a very simplistic model, not very realistic. Just keep in mind, okay, we make really simplistic assumptions. And I will see you in part 3. In this part, we'll talk about immigrants per firms in the United States and labor market assimilation of immigrants. I will see you in part 3. Bye.